Hey, so I want to talk about the knowledge, the bounds of knowledge that we can sort of have in this universe as living beings. So I think about this quite a lot. I mean, I think a lot of people do about the meaning of life, but more so, I think about I think about just what is the nature of reality and how much can we even know, right? Some people say, well, it's hidden from us, or even if you were to figure out some sense of it, it would be taken away. And so, first thing I want to talk about actually is control. So, some people in my life um, are control freaks, um, and it's very hard to deal with that, to help them. I've tried talking to this person, but the way they were raised, I mean, raised very similar to me actually. Jewish parents didn't even let us cross the street at a certain age, and well, a young age rather, and everything was tried to be as safe as possible, and ultimately that's a failing strategy, right? Because just by the nature of being alive, there's an external control that that one cannot have dominion over. And I think a lot of people, when they hear the word God invoked, they try to they immediately sort of become dismissive, and they reject the notion. Okay, if you don't believe in the Abrahamic God, or even just personal God, a God of human directive, that doesn't mean that there's not something that's instantiating this universe. So I'm a programmer, right? And I study mathematics too. I've taken neuroscience classes. I graduated with a pre-med degree. So so I have a bit of a spectral knowledge about these different areas, especially programming, because that's been my career for a long time. And the thing you got to think about is, or at least I think about, is this lack of control, right? And the idea that something is clearly instantiating this universe, this physicality, right? Whatever is physical is only physical because of permanence, right? If everything was changing all the time, the world would just be static, right? There'd be nothing interesting to glean from it. But there is permanence as far as we can tell. So, we see, like my hand right here, and it's staying like that. So something's keeping its state. Now, whether you want to call that, like an analog computer storage, or back in the 1900s and before, it wasn't computers that was the paradigm, metaphor. It was mechanized things. It was billiard balls or gears and pulleys. But ultimately, the idea was something that we understand, and that is an ordered system, and say, okay, well, we need to store information, and what ways can we do that? So now, we have computers, and we have this definition of a Turing machine, and of course, billiard balls can actually compute, something called collision-based computing. So in any sense, people reject the notion, right? Back to that. Sorry if I went on a tangent, but people want to reject the notion of God when they hear the word because of all these predisposed, assumptions and just what's out there may not vibe with it. But I think it's very dismissive because, I mean, all God really means that word, and there's no reason not to use it. It's just essentially, the entity or the bootstraps that hold everything up. Why is there permanence? Why does gravity, remain as a law? Well, maybe it doesn't, 100,000 light years away, right? Maybe it doesn't in certain places. And we can only sit here and send out some satellites to very short distance in this galaxy and receive passive radio waves. Yeah, we can do, not sonar, but we can do radar and things like that to get distances. But ultimately, even in the cosmic sense, we're in this small little area, just trying to match up patterns, laws, physics, right, with the whole thing. Say, oh, well, this looks like here we have these observations coming into light from galaxies very far away, billions of years old, that may not even exist anymore, right? You're getting the light from something that's already dead because it takes a while to travel. And then, of course, you have the cosmic background radiation, which just permeates the entire cosmos and sort of this afterglow of what could have been the initial construction of the universe. So, in any sense, right, we're not in control, and this word God is nothing to be ashamed of. It's the admission that if God wanted to strike me dead right now, and he had that sort of directive, right, then he could, right? And it's not even so much about God, but I think it's more about life. See, consciousness, right, and life takes present in a subjective sense, right? As far as we know, anything that can think is sort of an internal. It thinks internally, right? It's subject to the externalities. So to be alive is to be vulnerable, is to be, subject to external control, regardless of the God stuff. It's just to be alive anywhere is to be subject to externality. Now, whether you want to say that, I personally don't think that God or nature, right, has this sort of is. I used to think that there was that nature fooled around a lot more than it actually does. I personally think there's something called cosmic irony, also what Carl Jung called synchronicity. It's just this events that we would consider coincidences. Normally, science would say, oh, well, they're connected via causes and effects, causal relationship. But Carl Jung said, oh, there's also acausal, where things are connected via meaning, not necessarily because of cause and effect, but just because of meaning. And he thought that nature, or just the universal aesthetic, was sort of like this whimsical kind of humor, like nature has a sense of humor, or at least like this kind of like the Cheshire cat grinning. It's always there, but it's not always apparent. And once in a while, sort of gives you a little taste. I think that's the way nature is, a bit. I wouldn't say modest, but not the kind of entity to just pop out of the fucking sky, part the clouds, take a human form or a body type form, and start speaking to you. I mean, it's certainly possible, right? It's certainly possible. Like we said, lack of control. Anything could really happen, right? I've been alive for 28 years. How long has the universe been around? Do I really know anything about how events really occur? How much permanence there really is? I can say, oh, well, I've been told by my externalities, history and physicists and all that this pattern of life is quite stable. And, God's not just going to pop out and say, I fucked with you, right? But that's not guaranteed. That's not guaranteed. It's just what we'd like to believe. I don't think anyone really wants to believe that what they've been sort of conditioned to is not even part of a larger pattern. It's somewhat just the start of some really random, chaotic shit. Chaos is sort of the enemy to a lot of people. Back to that control issue that almost everyone has. You know, the housewife or the eligible bachelor trying to make the perfect apartment, the perfect house, get all the furniture, this and that. You get married and, you know, that comfortable. You want to be comfortable, but at the same time, to be comfortable, to have control, is to kill somewhat of the chaos and kill the spirit of life, which is lack of control. I mean, that's what sort of gives you pause. The unpredictability, that synchronicity, these acausal events sort of just, you know, surprising you and making you say, wow, there's really a lot at work that I will not be able to digest possibly, or at least this is mystical enough that it may take me my whole life to really understand what's going on. So I think I'll stop here soon. But you know, to wrap it up, this you know, a lot of people want to be confident. They want to take I call it sort of just based on how I was raised. They want to take sort of the Jewish kind of realism of, you know, comfortability, and what I see is how it is, and so many years of experience as a human gives you an idea about how God acts and how the universe acts, that it's stable to the pattern that came in to, you know, the brain is just sitting in the head. It's all just information flowing in, and the brain pattern matches, right? But ultimately, like I was saying before, the control is not there. In fact, as far as I understand it, some of the tenets of Buddhism, at least Zen Buddhism, kind of says you're in this sort of bubble, and thoughts are sensations, and senses are, of course, sensations, but it's all just coming into you, right? And there's really no outward control. Even free will is somewhat of a like, it's a catch-22 basically. I mean, when you break it down, it really is, because to have a will, there has to be an I, right? And of course, I'm not the kind of person that's going to say there is no I. Of course, we're all made from this energy, electromagnetic radiation. Then you can include other fields if you want, like strong force, weak force, Higgs field, and all that, gravitational field. But ultimately, you know, there's a bunch of information storing fields, and everyone's constructed of them, right? So, you know, you could just the identity is one we create, and it sort of does exist too. It's not totally superfluous. Can someone else talk for me? You know, no one else can so much control my body, right? So there is identity. It's and this ego dissolution is not in the conventional sense. You know, it's not what everyone thinks, that we're all one. Like, we are all one, but there's layers. It's like a Russian doll, Matryoshka. You have, yes, at the core of everything, it's all one system. But does that mean that there isn't an individual? I mean, that's just that's the nature of sort of being an individual, is having some level of control at the bottom, right? At the bottom rung. And then, you know, and that's where all the arguments and debates come from. Where does control start and where does it end? You know, in a deterministic universe, you know, if you'd say, okay, well, quantum physics, maybe Einstein said God didn't throw dice, maybe you believe that, you say the universe is deterministic. Well, in a deterministic system, even though there may be individual entities that decide what to do based on externalities, the whole thing itself is, we can know how it's going to run without considering individuals. But the same thing can be said for a indeterministic universe, one where there is randomness. So, no matter what, the question is, well, if the whole thing can run without considering individuals, then there's truth to a lot of these different things. You can say there's an individual sense to your own thinking, but physically, you are part of a large system. Ultimately, the separation is somewhat of a convenience thing. Where's the center of all the senses? Well, it's right here, right? You have the eyes. You could say the heart's the center of actual physical body, but ultimately, all the senses, the qualia, come in, and your brain forms this center or like spatial kind of awareness where you're in the center of all the senses. You have the visual field. You have you get the sense of placement, but the sense of placement is not totally. It's not totally fictitious. It's fictitious. It really is. As far as it understands the human body and the brain, it's really just kind of making it omnipresent that all these senses are attached to a body, and they're all essentially looking outward from some central point. Whatever you want to call the center, whether it be the brain or something, they're all attached to this body at a certain point. And so that's where, if you want to say there really is a self, that of course biologically and physically there is a individual array of sensors, right? So it's kind of bullshit when people want to claim one over the other. It's the combination of all those things that matter. And just like the answer to life or the meaning of the universe and things like that, people want to claim that or some people are drawn to the answer. I actually am drawn to mathematics, prime numbers, and AI, sort of cellular automata, and universal systems, collision-based computing based on thermodynamic principles, things like that. That's sort of, sort of want to peel away what it is to be life, or what it is to be a being, or what it is to have rules in the first place that can, maybe a concise, tiny rule that can generate a whole universe. That is something that, it just bothers me. I wanna look into it. I keep coming back to it, but ultimately, I ask myself, well, what's more important? Here's a funny one. What's more important, a question or its answer? And actually, the answer to that question would be an answer. But if you said it was the question, then your answer is sort of referring to itself and sort of paradoxical. Because, well, you get it. The answer to the question is an answer. So there's not an easy way to discern that, and it relates to what you should look for in life, because you search for this answer, but how was the question asked? You were born, you had all these events in life. Obviously, as a young child, you probably didn't think much about these kind of things, so you had more sentimental and personal experiences that shaped you, and maybe then you started thinking about how it all really matters, or what matters, or what's it all for. But ultimately, even if you somehow, right, came to, something about the Riemann hypothesis, or distribution of primes, or how quantum physics maybe is not even, quantum physics describes things so well, but there is no real randomness. There's actually a universe inside each electron, and based on what happens in that universe, the spin is either up or down, some downsampling of a space so large, but it turns into a single bit, saying it from bit, a universe for each bit. And it's just, these kind of things just kind of blow my mind, at least. But even if you found out something that just blew your mind and sort of made it all make sense, there would still be that question and that idea that what's more important, the organic life, the mortal life, and the people in your life, family, friends, and sentiment, love, right? Love is all you need. I really do think this is the case. Is it love that really mattered? And these personal events? Or was it this cold, hard, deterministic formula or finding that makes it all make sense, that tells you how it all was done? What's more important, the individual or the universe? The question or the answer? The individual was necessary. The personal life, the mortal life was necessary to question the immortal one. So who's more important?